Hi, and welcome back to my podcast, Unapologetically Brown. I hope you enjoyed episode 1 as much as I enjoyed doing it. We had a great episode. You got a great insight into my family's background and how they settled here and how they made a life for themselves in the UK. So in today's show, Geeta's going to be back with my sister, second in line, Harjinder. And they're going to be talking to us and giving us an insight into our family dynamics and what life was like for them growing up in the 70s and 80s. As far as I'm concerned, they actually got the raw deal. They got the short straw. They were faced with so many challenges because they were the firstborn. Our parents were still in that mode of thinking that they've got to hang on to every culture and tradition that they'd left behind in the Punjab. And that's what's going to be relevant about today's show, because it was impossible. You couldn't do it, not while you were living in the UK, or you had to find a very good balance. And that's what we're going to be talking about, and we're going to get their insight into it. So let's not waste any time. Let's get them on. So welcome to the show. Geeta, it's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on again. And Harjinder.
Thank you.
So you guys were the guinea pigs. You guys were part of this experiment that you didn't sign up for, as far as I'm concerned. And I think I can say that because I'm the younger sibling and I had it slightly easier, didn't I? So tell me, what was it like growing up, having to juggle this act from a very young age? You guys became experts at it. What was life really like growing up in our household, being a youngster, when mum and dad were still trying to put those pressures on you?
I think we didn't know any better. So I'm not sure, if you don't know any better, then it's not, you talked about it being an experience. Well, actually, it was our childhood. It was the way that we were being brought up, and we knew no better. So there wasn't a sense of we disagreed or we rebelled against everything because we knew no better.
Yeah.
Mum and dad, and it was difficult times because, we were growing up in a family that weren't baptized Sikhs. So mum and dad didn't follow the religion in the way that baptized Sikhs did. So dad didn't have a turban. He did everything that maybe Sikhs, we had meat in the house, we had alcohol in the house. So we weren't baptized Sikhs, but culturally there was an expectation that we held on to some of those traditions.
Yeah.
And I think that was the hardest.
So that must have been tougher, because had we had religion in our life the way we would have done if we were baptized,
it would have been a lot more easier. Absolutely. I think if we were being brought up as baptized Sikhs and we were following the religion, life would have been a lot easier. We were picking and choosing. But picking and choosing what my parents wanted and what was culturally, because culture and religion are two very different things, and I think we have to remember that. So it's more about the culture.
Very strict.
Yes.
And I think because we were girls as well, that played quite a big part.
Do you really think that played a part?
Yes, it definitely did.
Yeah.
There's certain things we weren't allowed to do, and because they had 5 girls, it was all about the respect and what will people say. And we weren't allowed to go out by ourselves. If we did go out, we used to have to put our head down, not look around. Look around.
Yeah, I remember my mum saying, when you're walking down the street, nowadays we encourage our girls to walk proud, heads
confidently.
Up. My mum would say, put your heads down and walk the street and don't watch anybody that's walking either side of you, which now looking at it, you'd say, how odd is that to say to your children?
Remember my dad coming home and actually saying, oh, so-and-so saw Geeta. I think I was walking to the restaurant and I was walking to the restaurant and we saw Geeta and she's such a good girl. We observed her and she did not put her head up.
Isn't that funny?
And he was so proud of that and he couldn't wait to come home and tell us.
And do you think that was a case of an expectation? It was, they had a reputation and you had to set the example for your younger siblings? Yeah? Do you think that was where it was coming from?
Yeah, and like I said, it was extended family. In those days things didn't happen, love marriages or girls running away or anything, higher education. It was Yeah.
And I think there was also, you know, the expectation, family pressures.
Family
Yeah.
pressures.
And actually, let's not forget, mum and dad were not educated.
Yeah.
They knew no difference. So
No.
whatever was instilled in
To them.
Yeah.
they were instilling in
They
us.
were carrying it
So
on.
they were carrying. So to dad, reputation was a
Very
very,
big thing.
he was a very proud man.
Yeah.
And to him, you know, his daughters carrying on with making sure that he remained a proud man not to bring any shame was really, really important.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were certain things now you look back and think how odd could those have been at the time. But
I think we did him proud though. Even we didn't, you know, if we think about it, even before he died, he was a proud man.
Yeah, definitely.
Because he never.
Yeah,
and that proudness comes because we did what we were asked.
We were asked to do.
So there is
what was expected of us. We did it.
Yeah. And do you think? Because I feel because we were being brought up in Southall and there was a big community, there were a lot of people known to him, and he knew a lot of people. It was even more pressure. You know, do you think that had my dad moved somewhere else where there wasn't so much, do you think they may have been slightly different? I really do feel because we were in Southall.
No.
Everybody knew everybody knew each other's business. You know, it was a case of we can't have that, you know, we cannot have those, you know.
I think it was dad just the way he was.
Yeah.
He was him and mum.
And that's where he would be anywhere, regardless where we lived.
Yeah, I don't think it would have made a difference.
think, you know, if we weren't in Southall, we were still having to come home and we were still having to change into our traditional Punjabi suits. We were still being asked to speak the Punjabi language. Dad wouldn't allow us to speak English at all. He'd go, what's this ger you're doing, you know? And because obviously there was also a fear we were talking about things that he couldn't understand.
Yes.
So of course that was, but what we felt is he was instilling, you know, there was the need for us to learn the language, understand the language. So, but I think I agree with Geeta. I think regardless of where we lived, I think he would have brought us up in that way. I think mum and dad were still, they were overly proud people. Mum till this day is overly proud. And
she
sometimes
still has
that is a barrier, and that's not necessarily always a good thing, but you know, for them that was a really important thing.
Because it comes with its own challenges, doesn't it? It comes with its own challenges, which you two faced a lot.
Yeah, we were always told you don't need any friends.
Yes, so you weren't encouraged to.
Are your friends? You do not make any friends at school. You play in the playground with your sisters. You know, these are the sort of things.
And that was a real thing, wasn't it? Because I remember the conversations. You know, mum saying, "Why do you need friends? You've got each other."
That's right.
How did that make you feel? Because I know in primary school maybe not so. You know, because we did have each other, but in secondary school you want to keep certain things to yourself. You don't necessarily want your siblings. How did you both navigate that with your friendships? Because I know you had some close friendships, Geeta. You had some best friends, and Harjinder, you had a couple of, I wouldn't say, I don't know you to have had best friends, but I know you had some friends. But how did you navigate that? How did you find your way around it as a young adult, you know, a teenager?
It was difficult. Was never allowed to go out like to the cinema or go to their house. The friendship was at the school gates, and that was it. Yeah.
And I think you got lucky because you found some probably
nice Punjabi friends, didn't you?
But even then, they were one of my best friends. She was more modern.
Yes,
short hair.
Their family was.
You know, wearing short skirts and everything. So they were a modern family. Even that used to be a problem.
Yeah. Even that created some issues. For mum and dad. Because they almost felt that you might be influenced by these friends.
Yeah, that's
Do you think that was their biggest fear, why they didn't want it, Harjinder? That, you know, they were probably quite happy that you didn't make solid friendships because they didn't want you influenced by other girls.
And I don't think I did make any solid friendships because actually I'm not in touch with any friends from school. And I think that was the reason. I didn't find any Punjabi friends. I had a very good Muslim friend.
You did, yeah.
I had a very good Hindu friend, and I had a lot of English friends. But I wasn't allowed to do anything they were allowed to do. So, especially my English friends. So going out was a big restriction. So yeah, that friendship didn't really become a friendship that you would, you know. So yeah, I think it was a fear that we would asked to do or we would begin to ask to do things that no, you know, and there was a lot of the times we didn't ask to do things because we knew
the answer would be no.
You wouldn't even ask.
We was any school trips like there was a cruise going, and you know, I used to tear the letter up
before it even came home.
Yeah, because we knew what the answer was going to be.
Elaborate a little bit about that, because you said that you felt that it was it a pretense you were, but what were, when you say that, what do you mean by that?
I think obviously we went to school, but actually at school you were a different person.
Yeah.
So you were trying to integrate with your friends from different cultures. You were trying to understand their way of life, which was really hard because I had a lot of white friends.
Yeah.
And they were allowed
to do the school we were at?
It was the school. Yeah. You know, when you remember, we went to a school in Leafy Ealing at the time.
Yeah.
A lot of middle class white girls were at that school. So I had a lot of those as friends, but they were allowed to do a lot of the things we weren't. You know, they would go to the cinema. They would go out in the evenings. They would go out
meet up at weekends.
I couldn't do any of that. So there was a bit of a pretense there.
Yeah.
You know, so you wanted to fit in, but you couldn't fit in.
You couldn't fit in.
Because when you came home, you had to be that
It's a
Punjabi
different
girl.
life, yeah.
You know, you had to put your Punjabi suit on. You then had to speak Punjabi. And then you had to do a lot of the things that were expected from us, the chores, which actually a lot of the other girls weren't doing.
Yeah.
So, you know.
And weekends were taken up by family stuff.
Because there was some aunt to visit or some uncle to visit
or a
wedding.
Yeah.
Or someone was visiting you.
Or we had a lot of interesting parties, didn't we?
Yeah. So, you know, yes, there was always celebrations.
Yeah.
So it was two very different lives.
Yeah.
You were trying to balance two, you know, and if you look at it now, actually, that's quite tough.
Yeah.
That's quite, in itself, you had to be, you know, it's quite challenging to go to school every morning, wake up and go and try and focus and then know that you're going to come back and life's going to be very different.
Yeah.
It was very different.
Yeah,
very
different.
different.
The cultures were very different. It was understanding. We were trying to understand British life.
But what was British life? I had no idea.
We didn't know what the Tracys and the Smith family or the Brown family were doing because we had no connection.
Yeah.
I didn't have any English friends at school.
Yeah.
It were Punjabi girls.
Yeah.
And I was probably too scared to make friends with an English girl because I didn't know.
You didn't know what was...
Well, we weren't going to meet them anywhere else, were we? Because we weren't
They were going out. They were going to the shopping centre.
Cinemas. They were meeting people.
At weekends, they were seeing, you know, each other. We weren't
as
soon as we were out of that school gate, that's it.
But you're right. The British life and the British values, we had no idea.
We had no idea.
Until much
what
later
was still being instilled in us was our Punjabi culture.
Yeah.
You know, our Christmas was Punjabi Christmas.
Yeah, it was a Punjabi Christmas.
You know, we weren't having turkey. We were having.
We did have turkey.
No, at the beginning we never. We used to have chicken.
See, I don't remember
that. Again was just culture.
Only when we started cooking, we started making the turkey and everything. Mum used to just make a chicken.
Yeah.
But again, you know, we knew what Christmas was about.
We knew what it was about.
It was more from school,
not from our parents.
But we celebrated it in a very Punjabi style because, as you said, it was a holiday.
Yeah.
You know, but we didn't. Let's look at it. I didn't know what the British values were.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what the British culture was.
Yeah.
We were still trying to, our parents were holding on desperately to a culture they had left behind and wanted that to
follow
continue.
Through to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a way it did.
Yeah.
It did
Many
continue.
ways it did.
Yeah.
So we all went to an all-girls school.
Yeah.
I mean, mixing them with boys was just forget it.
Yeah.
That was off limits completely. So we all went to a all-girls school in Ealing. We got a good education. We got a fairly good education, but the social aspect was very different. We were dropped off outside the school gates, weren't we?
And Dad would be there half an hour early in the evening
to pick us up,
to make sure we come out of those school gates.
Yeah, looking like they'd left us.
Yeah.
And I think going back to the point that you made about a good education, I think you got the good education.
Yes.
I think me and Geeta struggled.
Yeah.
I struggled at school.
Yeah.
I struggled a lot, and that was because actually, you know, at the time maybe, you know, we didn't have the support network at home, but also in school because they didn't, you know, at that time and in that era, not It
wasn't recognised,
wasn't recognised. English was our second language.
Yeah.
We weren't speaking English at home.
Yeah.
We were speaking Punjabi. So there were difficulties and there were challenges. And I think we probably, weren't given some of the support that maybe you and the others maybe have got.
I think Mum and Dad, they were just waiting for us to turn 18.
Yeah.
And so that they could find us a suitable partner and get us married.
I think their aim was to just
reach that age of 18.
Do you think that's because you were the oldest too? Because I feel to a certain extent they did do that with me as well. I mean, I was older and don't get me wrong, I do feel lucky in those aspects. But do you think that's because you were the older too?
Yeah, because we were the oldest.
Yeah. And with going back to your school life, do you feel there was an element of escapism going to school? Don't get me wrong, we had a lovely family life. We did have a loving family and we had, from what I can remember. But do you think it was an element of you could be something different at school to what you were at home? Was there ever that element? Because for me, there certainly was.
Not for me.
No, I don't think for me either. I'm not going to lie. I don't.
You
think
were the same person.
I don't think my school days were the best days.
Yeah.
I don't.
But do you feel you were the same person?
No, I think you had to.
You
separate.
had to.
I think
So
you tried to be.
Was a certain element of.
I think we tried to be something in school that we weren't.
Yeah.
And that was really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to be something you're not. So it really couldn't take yourself into school with the way that you were at home.
Yeah.
There was a lot of pretense going on.
Yeah.
You know, because life at home was very
different.
Yeah.
How was it different? What do you remember of those years? I mean, we were all given household chores, weren't we? From day one, Mum made sure that we knew how to do certain things.
Well, Mum and Dad were always busy working. So, we used to, in the restaurant we used to go to. And so,
we brought each other up almost, didn't we?
Basically, the boys definitely.
Yeah.
I remember
they
feeding,
came much later on, though.
nappies, with the boys. And even Ranjit,
our younger sister,
doing feeding and everything. It was just, the house was always buzzing.
Yeah.
There was never a time where we just sat and watched a movie just with Mum and Dad.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen. It was an open house. There'd always be some uncle, auntie from India who's staying.
It was Piccadilly Circus, wasn't it?
There'd be some relatives coming from Birmingham, Wolverhampton. There was always something happening
always
there.
something happening.
Granddad stayed with us for a few years. A lot of people coming to see him. It was always an open door
going on.
Yeah.
And now you look back at it, actually, it was wonderful.
It was fun.
It was fun. It was family.
Yeah.
It was, everybody was, we all wanted to be there. We were all together.
We used to love our cousins coming around.
Yeah.
And then we used to go to Wolverhampton a lot, go and stay
Visit
with
them.
there. And Dad, on a Friday, put us in the back of the car and we drive there, stay there
Because
Saturday,
Dad's
Sunday.
family stayed there, didn't they?
And then we come back on a Sunday. You didn't have to phone anybody to say you're coming or someone phoned you. They used to just turn up at the door.
It was just an open house, wasn't it?
And it used to be fun because all of our cousins were roughly our age.
Yeah.
And there used to be a lot of fun in those days.
Yeah. And we don't tend to have that now, do we?
There was no rivalry. There was no jealousy. We were just kids, normal kids having fun.
Yeah. And we'd just stick some duvets on the floor.
And
that was it. It was
and
like a
spend the whole
campsite,
night
wasn't it?
talking and having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were good days. They were special memories. And it's good that we have those memories. But do you feel nowadays, obviously kids don't view it like that, but do you think we got it wrong and we viewed it differently? Like we didn't have any privacy. We didn't have those friends. We didn't make those relationships. Or, as you say, we didn't know any difference. So there's no, we can't,
And I think it's hard to say, was it right or wrong?
Yeah.
Because at that time, I think it was the way life was.
Yeah.
So for us to sit here and say, well, we got it wrong or our parents got it wrong, actually they did what they could.
But it was happening all around us, wasn't it? The
Yes,
same. It was happening in other families
in
as
all
well.
families.
And,
yeah.
and
There was
you've
no
got to
right or
remember,
wrong.
these two individuals came together, Mum and Dad, and again, they didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And then had this family.
Yeah.
And we're
It was
in
a massive
foreign
family
country,
as well.
and without the education.
Exactly. And it happens still. When you're marrying, you're not just marrying the person, you're marrying the family.
So Mum.
So it's a big Mum came from a small family into such a large family.
So,
and then she had her own large family.
Yes.
7 children.
Yes.
So when you look at all of that, actually, how right were they going to get it? And what was, and they didn't get it wrong.
No.
I don't think they got it wrong.
No.
I think, but those looking back might say, God, that must have been challenging or hard. And it was hard.
Yes.
But I don't think it was wrong.
No.
And if someone said was it a happy, of course it was a happy child.
Yeah.
But there were challenges.
Yeah.
We used to go to the seaside twice.
Dad would get us all packed. I mean, it didn't matter how many of us were in the back of the car. There could have been 10 of us.
Yeah.
But we managed to get
Margate every summer, Brighton.
We did have some lovely.
It's not, we were never deprived of anything.
No.
And
those memories are fantastic, aren't they? We look back on them so fondly.
We wore the clothes that Mum bought us.
Yeah.
We didn't have a choice till we sort of, I think, got to maybe
a bit older,
maybe 15, 16.
Yeah.
We wore what was given to us, and it was...
Yeah.
But it shaped us.
It shaped us.
It shaped us as individuals. And now when we talk to our children, they probably don't understand fully because of the way we are.
But I don't think that generation would understand it because it's so different. It's so alien. It's so alien. And I think that's what makes it so special, is because we laid the framework for them to have a very different. So let's go back to us as siblings, as growing up, because I know you two are extremely close now.
Are we?
Used to.
You are extremely close, but that's not how it's always been, has it?
No.
So come on, who wants to start? Who wants to start?
I think
I think Geeta should start. She is the oldest, so let's let her start.
Oldest, and I think Mum and Dad more favoured.
But you being the oldest, they had that special connection with you.
I did have it. They used to ask me a new TV,
being the oldest,
a new tape recorder. What are we gonna, what are we gonna get? So I was, but I felt because it was mentioned to me loads of times, I was more dark skinned than the sister.
Yeah,
and Dad used to favour her more.
Right. Well, you felt Dad favoured her more.
I felt that was something that I was very insecure about, was the colour of my skin. And mind you, I was probably the same colour as my father.
Yes, you definitely were.
But he was more, and this is my thinking, it was never said, but this is what I thought, that they favouring her more because she was fair. Yeah.
And in our
Indian culture,
they do have that, and they do have that in our culture,
and it still goes on.
Yeah, it does still go
when
on. When
mother-in-laws are looking for daughter-in-laws,
they want fair.
Fair skin. Is she fair?
They're obsessed with it.
They are obsessed with it,
and it's sad because our community and they are, and it stems back to, the sad thing is, it stems back way back. If we look back, and there is no truth in it, but of course it does stem back to somewhere, and it's interesting to read where it actually does come from, because it does exist. Is that many people do believe that fair people are more prosperous, more intelligent. What they don't realise is that the darker skin are the workers who were on the farms and caught the sun. Also, back in the day, of course, when the British went to, over to India, of course, they were all fair-skinned people, and they were more intelligent, more prosperous. They were trying to teach us, how to be a civilization. So darker skinned people almost looked up to this. So there is a history behind this concept. So you can imagine our parents growing up with this ingrained in them, because that's what they were.
Well, I sort of say to Mum, Mum, why am I darker? And then everybody else was. She said, when I was having you, I was in the extended family. Oh. I didn't have the freedom to eat and drink what I wanted to.
Oh, how
when
funny.
She was pregnant the second time, she was in her own house. She did her own food shopping. She said, I drank and ate what I wanted to. And that used to be her excuse.
That's her take on it.
I used to, drink a lot of milk.
So that's so funny. Again, that's... again, it's another myth that they have bought, and it just goes to show what they have been subjected to, and the traditions and cultures they're almost having to. And did you, Harjinder, did you get a sense of this from Geeta? And
Geeta was a bully. She was a big bully. Geeta was an absolute, when we were growing up, it was tough. And probably tougher than my siblings realised, because Geeta
she was very sensitive. She was a very sensitive and emotional child. She used to cry at the drop of a pin.
But now you would wonder why, because she'd gather everybody together and she'd be the ringleader and get everybody together.
I do remember those times.
And you would have your little conferences, and I'd be left
Because she'd always be crying. She never wanted to take place. But now she's probably the strongest out of all of us, and I'm the opposite. It's reversed.
It's true.
Definitely reversed.
And with time,
that must have had an impact on you, though. I mean, I never thought about it until now, really, because I do remember those conferences,
little meetings,
and little meetings we'd have, and how we used to go and buy the latest cassette. And Geeta was really into a Bhangra, and we'd go and buy the latest cassette from, what was that shop called? Verdi's on King Street. So we'd go and get the latest music cassette. It was released, and we'd be there outside the shop. We'd buy our Stardust magazine, movie magazine, all the cassettes. We'd bring them home, and we'd leave Harjinder out. We'd leave her out, and we'd have the music on. We'd be reading our magazines, and then we'd practice all the moves. We'd still leave her out. And it's only now I look back at, and there were so many of us, it was actually quite a mean thing. I mean, it really must have...
You know, if you were a child of today, you'd be in therapy for it.
But
I think at that time...
We were such a big family, it was...
I suppose I got the attention from Mum and Dad.
Mum and Dad.
And I think because of that, it probably...
It's like first time they went to India after... They got married. Dad went many times by himself. But first time Mum went back to India... They took
Harjinder
with him.
Did you feel resentful?
Yeah. Why am I at home? I'm the oldest. Why didn't I go?
But we were always left at home, youngsters.
We were always left at home.
Yeah.
And on that first trip, I couldn't believe it.
Do you feel you were the favourite, Harjinder? Because you were fair-skinned and you were you were, let's face it, she was the prettiest, wasn't she, out of all the girls?
I think at the time, probably, no, you don't. I didn't ever think they would treat me any differently. But yes, maybe now looking back, yes, going with them. And Dad would always say, come along. Yeah, he would always, you know, there is a question about, you know, why did I always go on those trips and nobody else? So, maybe I was. And maybe that's what plugged the gap. So I didn't really feel, you know, when you guys were ganging up, it was just, it's okay. Because Mum and Dad would always be there. And
and there was a comfort. It was almost
there was a comfort there. It was an interesting...
I think, and the others probably did what I told them to do.
Yeah, yes, we did.
Very good
we followed. We followed.
Yeah, you did.
We were quite scared. Yeah. We were quite scared of her.
She was the leader.
Yeah, follow the leader. I mean, you did do some funny things. You pierced my ears with a needle, you know, and I was 14.
She did rebel.
She did rebel.
I did rebel during, I think I remember, and I think when I found out Mum was pregnant for the 7th time, and I found those tablets, the Preg Day tablets, and I cried and I lost it. And I said, you're having another baby. What are we trying to do? Have a football team? And I remember Dad sitting me down and saying, why are you upset? You should be happy if you have another brother or another sister. Yeah. But I said, the mission was... I said, we can't all fit into one car as it is. And I was so angry. I was in high school.
Yes.
How was I going to tell my friends my mum's having another baby? Again. I can understand they wanted a boy. So they had Bob.
That was the mission, wasn't it?
But then they... wanted another son, and I just could not, and that really, I think that really messed me up. It really played on my head.
It had an impact on you. But look at you guys now. You survived.
I think we survived, and I think we grew a lot closer as we then grew older. Geeta got married very young. I got married very young. We both had our children very young. And that brought us together because we shared our experiences of both marriage and motherhood together. And we still do.
Supporting each other.
We supported, and our two youngest... No, my oldest and Geeta's youngest, there's only 6 weeks between them. So it really did bring us together, actually.
And it's not any... there's no, like, any... sibling competition.
No, we didn't have any rivalry.
It's never, you know, we had the same education.
Yeah, we did.
You know, and Harji's done very well. You know, she's done her degree and she did it through work and she's done really well. And I probably go to her for guidance, you know, so there's nothing, we don't hide anything from each other. We talk on the phone a couple of times in the day.
Growing up, obviously, like I said, we had these stories. We had this sibling rivalry, but we all came together in the end. And we had some fantastic moments. We were that family bargee on the beach. We were. We did do it, didn't we?
We did.
We had many summer holidays in Margate and Brighton. Like you said, Dad would get us all in the van and off we went. Safari Park, Windsor Safari Park, before it became Legoland. And we had those great experiences, which truly should have really brought us all together. But I feel the generational gap was quite different, because you guys were treated very like the older two, always the older two, and we were treated like the younger two. It was almost like we were looking at you guys growing up, knowing what's in store for you, that you were going to go off and be married and everything else. Did you have that sense while it was going on?
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to get married, because I'm going to get my freedom.
Yeah.
So my escape was going to be
getting
married, and I'll be able to cut my hair, wear makeup, put nail varnish on.
You were told all this as well, weren't you?
That's it. When you can do this when you get married.
Yeah.
Anything we used to wear it when you get married. Do it when you get married.
And did you feel the same, Harjinder?
Yeah, probably that there'll be a sense of you'll be able to do more.
Yeah, because I always felt us, the younger ones, like, while we were on these breaks and we were, going to Margate, Brighton, we were the ones going in the beach, and you guys were the ones sitting around Mum was having these conversations with you. Obviously I don't, was that how it was, or was it,
I think there was an expectation for us to behave in a particular way.
Yeah.
And we were always told.
And we
were always, and you probably never heard that, but we were always told, you've got younger sisters.
Yes.
And so if you were to do something, the consequences will be, so I think there was an expectation on us to make sure that we acted and behaved in a way that, you guys would look up to.
Yeah.
There was a bit about, I think we grew up before our time. Probably.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we had to grow up a lot, like Geeta said, and then Mum being, pregnant, with Bob and Regina, there was an expectation. Mum wasn't going to be at home. She wasn't going to be a stay-at-home mum. Mum and Dad had a business.
Yeah.
So we became very, we were bringing up the boys.
Yeah.
We were changing nappies. We were doing things that actually, you wouldn't be expected to do at that age.
Definitely.
And as you said earlier, we all had, which I think is not a bad thing. We were all given chores to do around the house.
Yeah.
You were all given particular, one of us would be cooking dinner. But actually, if you can imagine cooking dinner for a family.
No, I think one thing Mum didn't do, we didn't really go into the kitchen to cook a lot.
No, but
I think we used to
clean
Mum
up.
used to do the cleaning kitchen.
But we did used to make the rotis.
Oh, we made.
And by the time we finished making the rotis, we weren't hungry because there were so many rotis to make.
Rotis we used to, but we never made any dal sabji.
We didn't do none of that. We weren't taught.
We didn't do that. And while we had the restaurant, we were quite blessed. We didn't cook at home at all. It all used to come from the restaurant. But we did
have other
like
chores,
cleaning.
cleaning
used to be a nightmare.
Gardening,
we didn't have an ironing board. We used to sit put it on the dining
table.
And put, and do it on there. But we all had our own. The
chores.
oldest especially.
Yeah.
And then we were forever babysitting.
I think that may be the biggest thing.
Yeah,
we were always looking after each other.
Babysitting.
Yeah. And culturally, it was a thing, and I think across the board is if the older siblings set that example and they get some interest from families that are potentially got good sons who are going to be suitable for their hand in marriage, then the others will follow. Whereas if the older two rebel or do something out of line, then the others.
I think there was always that fear. There was always a fear from Mum and Dad that one of the girls may, end up doing something that will bring shame to the family. I think that's. Regardless, that was always there.
I think everyone had their money on me, didn't they?
We couldn't even think about rebelling.
Do you know what? Never. I was always a people pleaser. So I was always going to do what my dad said. Even if my dad said, go and jump into a well tomorrow, I would probably do that. Because I think we were brought up to do whatever you were, you did what you were
We just
asked.
didn't. I mean, I'd answer back to Mum, but not in front of Dad. We were so scared. If I had something, I'd make my point clear to Mum. But still, they always got their way.
They always just gave you that look, didn't they? And that's it, you knew.
But I think we wanted to make them happy.
Yeah,
I think it was instilled in us that actually.
And I think we knew we had no choice.
There was no
choice.
I
think that didn't stop the generations, because I still felt like that. I wanted to make them happy. But I think the whole expectations maybe were slightly different. You know.
I mean, it's like when you ask Mum now, she said it was different in your times.
Yeah, of course it was.
It was very different, she said, you know, and she does look back at
as
it.
the generations go.
It was different.
And you're right, the choice, you know, when you know there is only one choice.
Yeah.
And not that they never said there wasn't another choice, but there would always be that choice would come with, well, we won't support you in that choice.
We didn't have a choice what high school we went to.
Yeah, I mean, that
it was just put there. You're going to a girls' school.
You're going to
well, we weren't even given the choice on what clothes we would wear. Like you said,
we used to go to Sahotas.
And there was an interesting shop, wasn't it, Sahotas?
Yeah.
So Sahotas was a shop, I remember, she had...
Everything.
The display was unbelievable. She'd have clothes pinned and hanging, and it was quite interesting because
it would be from school uniform
but we couldn't. We never used to go all together because it was just too much. So it was a rotation. Mum would take us in turns. And I remember her being quite an interesting character with her husband, and she'd have the clothes all displayed in this strangest way. And it was the hype of fashion. It was the in thing. We would go there and shop.
I don't think we knew any high street shops.
No, we didn't.
At that time.
No,
I think
only later on we found out about
her shop.
She had tracksuits. She had school uniform tracksuits,
and she had some of the now you would say the designer, but she had some of those quite unique. Styles that now, you know. So.
She would give us a decent discount, wouldn't she, for the whole family?
The whole of Southall shop there.
Yeah.
But I'm sure people will remember.
I remember Mum used to have an account.
Yeah.
So it all went on account.
On
and
she'd
write it on a
pay it off
and then
every
she'd pay
week.
it off. Yeah. It was. I mean, it was fun though. It was our day out, wasn't it?
Going to Sahotas.
It was exciting.
But then we discovered Dorothy Perkins, CNA,
Top Shop.
Yeah,
Eton, that's it.
And we'd go to Hounslow or to Ealing. So those were our fond memories. Almost a bit of a rebellion. You know, we sort of rebelled against the Sahotas going to these high streets, and Mum didn't really want to be caught out. And I remember her saying, oh gosh, if we were found out we're shopping in different shops.
No, but I don't think she knew any different either. You know, she didn't know about these stores because she never wore those clothes, so she didn't know.
Yeah, Mum didn't actually, did she?
Because our auntie
she stuck to her traditional outfit, her Punjabi suits.
We used to go there.
Yeah,
I'd never seen my mum in trousers.
Yeah,
you know, it always used to be Punjabi suits.
So slowly but surely they started drifting away from the cultural norms, stopped shopping in the local Sahotas, you know, stopped giving them local business, and we started changing, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely they did change.
With the simplest things.
Yeah. As you guys were growing up, we saw a lot of change. It was different for you guys and for the youngest ones compared to, you know, the way it was for us. Definitely.
And we started to change in ways where even though they were modernising, they didn't completely change, did they? They didn't completely modernise. They wanted to still hold on to those traditions. So introductions were being made. The scene was set for you two. And I don't want to go into it too much because it's another episode on its own. How, when you started to see the first signs and talk and whispers in the house, because we heard them, you know, we could hear whispers and we knew what was in store. How did it make you both feel? Did you feel, gosh, I'm still so young, what's going on? You know, how did you feel?
Now, that being too young, I didn't think that because everybody around me, all my
was
cousins,
getting married at that age.
Were getting married at that age. So that wasn't a, you know, a question to ask. It was just the norm.
Yeah, at that time it was.
Our youngest boy got married at that age, so it wasn't.
And your friends were getting married.
Yeah, and my friends
were around you getting married.
That's how it was.
Yeah. And did you start to feel? Was it an excitement, or was it? You know, was it a natural did it all evolve?
Exciting because I was going to be able to do things that I weren't allowed to do while I was in Mum and Dad's house. Yeah. You know, go and meet friends, go to restaurants, cut my hair, wear English clothes, wear makeup.
So that's the sort of almost the price it was coming with.
Yeah.
And Harjinder, was that your experience, or did you have a completely different experience?
I don't know. I can't remember really giving too much thought. Like Geeta said, I think you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
I probably heard more of it because I was hearing lots of, I was engaged at birth and things like that.
Yeah,
so
that's an interesting story. We'll go into that.
So for me, I think it was always going to end up happening. So yeah, I think it was the norm. It was happening around us. So I don't think, but like Geeta said, Dad would always say, you'll be able to do all of this, when you get married, and you'd think, oh, okay, well, the quicker I get married, the quicker I can do
these things.
I could do all of this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't unusual because you're right. The circle of friends we had at that time, or, those outside of our sibling, circle, they were also getting married. Our cousins were getting married. We were going to weddings every week. It was a full packed sort of summer of weddings.
Yeah.
So it wasn't unusual.
Yeah.
And I think there was a sense of, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Actually, as we were going our trips to Birmingham while our cousins were getting married, there was a part of me that used to think, oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Actually, this is going to
And the weddings were great, weren't they?
They were great.
We had some brilliant weddings, didn't we?
We'd all get into that one car.
Yeah.
We'd all go up to Birmingham and Dibble Road, was it? Where some of our cousins lived.
Got married. I went a week before the wedding, and it was fantastic.
There was no pre-booking hotels or
all stayed in one house.
Notice. We were all and it was just so different.
Nowadays, kids don't want to give up their bedrooms for any guests that come.
Well, forget guests; they don't want to give it up for family.
Family, they're just not.
Do you know what I mean?
It was a really different time.
Yeah,
a time that I think a lot of people will say, actually, it was quite good times.
Yeah,
it was quite fun.
I don't think we missed out on anything.
No,
we had. It was good. I wouldn't say.
I mean, there was family. It was interesting because there was family dynamics,
and there was a lot of us.
And there was a lot of us, but we also saw our mum, our dad's family dynamics, and they were an interesting bunch. And there was always a story to be told.
But there was no friends. It was more family.
Yeah, it was very family.
There was the only friends they had was your mother and father-in-law. That which we got to know, but. There was no friends like coming over. It was always family. The family was so big.
It was a focal
that we could just concentrate on the family.
Yeah, it was the focus. The family was the focus.
Yeah.
But I suppose it would be because in those days, you got to remember that that's who they came here with, and that's who they set their base up with, the family. And it's interesting because that's how we are with each other now, aren't we? We're very much. Us, we have our friends, but we are still very much, like you say, going back to the home, going back to our house. It's the hub of our family, isn't it? That is it. It's the hub, and that's where we all congregate.
We do.
And we always end up there.
And I think a part of that is because it was instilled. And if we look at Dad and Dad's relationship with his family, his family was always, regardless of what went
Their
on
ups and downs.
behind the scenes, his brothers and his sisters were his life.
Yes.
And Mum had the same. Her younger brother and her older brother, they were her life. And her dad while he was alive. And so, I think that part of our upbringing has definitely shaped us.
And made us who we are.
Us family, and especially I think as sisters, the family is the it's key. It's key.
Yeah, it's key.
It's like,
and
the children, it's like, I can't. It's like if I'm going to Waitrose, I ring up Mum, I'm just off to Waitrose now. It's like, Mum, you're so old. And you still tell your mum where you're going.
Yes.
I'm going to do this today. We always know what one sibling is doing.
Yeah.
And that's just the way we are. But the kids nowadays, they find
very
that
different.
Really hard to digest that.
Yeah.
We know what's going on in each other's lives.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
And I don't know if that's because we live sort of close. But then, mind you, even Bibi in Spain, we know exactly what she's doing.
Yes.
Every day. We got Narinda in Solihull.
But I think that's our culture as well. I think if we were to talk to other families, they'd be saying the same thing. Our culture, it's ingrained in our culture that family comes first and family is ultimately, that's it.
Yeah. But I don't know, but you do see siblings that do fall out and then they don't talk for years and years. I just think our family has shaped it up for us.
I think our parents play a big part.
And our family, because our uncles and aunts, they were all very, we got that love.
Yeah,
and
they were part of our life.
Part of our life.
Yeah.
They were part. I mean, Dad's younger brother and sister, when they came from India, Dad brought them over, and they stayed with us for years and years till they got married. And it was fun. We used to have
some fond memories.
It was Shorty Boy. I had my first McDonald's with her when Baksis was born in 1980. We went to Mothercare to pick up his carry cot, and she treated me to my first McDonald's.
And you remember that?
1980. Yeah, I had the first taste of McDonald's.
And those are the fond memories, aren't they?
They are absolutely.
They're the fond memories.
And we used to go to her house, spend weeks and weeks there.
Yeah.
And, we didn't know anything
different.
And we got that love.
Yeah.
But
I think it shaped us, like you say, and it's made us who we are, and it's made us the women we are, even though we were expected to be two different things. We were almost playing two different roles. We were on this roller coaster where we were having to juggle these acts to suit the surroundings and the situations we were in. And again, I'll touch on that in the next episode because I think it's going to be an interesting one. We're going to finish soon because I think we've got some really good stories there, and we've had a really good, trip down memory lane. Just to wrap up, what would you say is your fondest memory? Because my memories are really different to your memories, and my memories, I've got some great fond memories of, your weddings. I was very young and everything was brilliant. We looked at things very differently. What's your fondest memory of being here, growing up, having the life you had? What's your fondest memory? What's the biggest thing you can take which has impacted you today, which you feel you're continuing on with your children? What can you give them? Geeta, you first.
I think when we were growing up, we were very scared of mum and dad. We were, there was that barrier there. We couldn't talk to them about everything. But once we got married, and I think you probably agree, once we got married, mum and dad became our friends.
Yes, they did.
We could talk to mum and dad about everything. It was more, it's like, as they got older, they were our friends, and we could discuss things, talk about everything with them, which we couldn't when we were younger because we were scared. We couldn't tackle a lot of things with them. So I think with your children, you have to break that barrier, and your children should be able to come to you and talk to you about everything. And I think that is something I have picked up as I've noticed. Relationship with the parents before my marriage completely changed to after I got married. And that could be because I grew up as well.
Yeah.
I had my own children, but mum and dad as well, they mellowed down quite a lot as they got older.
And do you think that's because also they feel their responsibility, they'd fulfilled their responsibility?
Yeah, probably. And we did as we were told.
Yeah.
We didn't give them any, none of their girls put any shame to them. And they
brought any shame upon them.
Shame to them. That in society they could hold their head up high.
Yeah.
And we said to Mum a couple of months ago, we said, Mum, you always say, oh, this didn't happen, but you've never ever said thank you, girls.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for not doing anything wrong, isn't it? Isn't that what we said?
Yeah.
Never said thank you for, we were respectable girls and we did nothing wrong and we did exactly what they asked us to do. We got married to who they asked us to get married to, and
not that us doing something would have been wrong, but in their eyes it would have been. Now if we had chose our partners that we wanted to marry, they may have seen that as wrong, but actually society wouldn't have seen it wrong.
In that day, I think it would have been different.
In that generation, it would have been.
It was a totally different. Yeah,
it would have been very.
Where now we tell our children, go and meet your own.
Yeah.
But in those days it would have been a big.
It would have been very different.
So Harjinder, for you, what's your fondest take, your memory that you can take on, and you sort of still give it and try and instill it into your children? What would you say?
It's the small things.
Yeah.
I think I remember the day we got our video cassette player. Do you remember the excitement on Dad's face bringing
we got
home?
Our video at Saxon Road.
Yes, so
we watched shortly our first movie.
Our first movie, and Dad was a big Bollywood, and we all know how much he loved Bollywood.
He did,
but it was how those small things, and at that
Put a
time
smile
that
on
was a
his face.
really big thing, to be able to afford a
Yes.
video cassette player, and then to be able to play a Bollywood movie on that. It was to Dad, that was like him being back home and remembering. And I think what we forget is those small things. I think we now live in a world where everything is just easy. It's accessible.
Easy comes and goes.
It's easy to get certain things. The value of what we have now doesn't really mean a lot.
Yeah. But we were pleased very quickly.
But we were
as well.
so pleased by the smallest things, you know.
Thing.
That to us, you know, if you remember, and then we'd be able to. There was a gentleman that supplied us with those cassettes. And we would get all of the latest movies as quickly as we could. And those are the times I remember us sitting as a family and watching those movies. And let's be honest, how much of that do we do now? Yes, we try to sit down with our children, but where are those fond memories of sitting down and watching those?
And I think even though they were strict, we don't have any bad feelings they were our parents, and whatever they did was probably for our best.
Well,
they were wiser, and and we never, there's no sort of, what shall I say?
Resentment.
There's no resentment anyway towards our parents, that they were strict with us, and we two eldest had it harder when they were more softer with the others. I think it's not there. We love
us as adults.
Yeah.
And we've got it wrong. Nobody gets it right. No. We haven't got it. They didn't get it right.
No, they didn't.
And we haven't got it right. And our children will listen to this podcast, hopefully, and realise that we haven't got it right.
Yeah.
But actually, we are shaped by the people that...
Well, they did the best they could do.
Because they throw it in our parents' face. We never threw it in their face. Where the kids nowadays, they will. They do. Mine certainly do. Oh, you didn't do this, and you should have done that different. But
so I think fond memories are definitely the small things that we got as children. You know, those video cassette player, the trips to, Windsor Safari Park, and the monkeys taking off Dad's windscreen wiper and things like that. And, those little things where, and we didn't have... We didn't go.
We didn't have fancy things.
restaurant.
Yeah, we didn't.
Mum would pack her brote, and we would pack sandwiches, and we would have, all of that on the beach.
It was quality time as a family.
And I just remember how Dad used to be able to buy us everything. Yeah. We got everything. I mean, the £20 notes were like that big, weren't they? Yeah. And he'd take out this big £20 note, and that £20 note got us candy floss, fish and chips, everything. Around in the arcades, rides, everything we'd got. Dad didn't say no to any of it. So when we had a trip to the seaside, that £20 note went a long way.
Even at home, the ice cream van was told to park outside our house every time he was coming around in the summer.
They were good.
Do you remember those cash and carry trips?
Yeah.
I mean, if we'd got a box, they'd have to be a box of the same crisps.
Yeah.
Or they'd have to be, but we bought everything in bulk.
We were never, and
we could understand why we bought everything in bulk, because there were so many of us.
And when you were younger, me and Dad used to go to the first Tesco's in Greenford.
Yes.
And we used to bring the food back in boxes. So we were very lucky. And then he used to get the Christmas hamper from when he worked in the baths. Hamper. And we used to, halfway used to go to Philip upstairs, because we never used to eat the Christmas pudding or anything like that. But what we did, we used to, and those were exciting times.
And they were big celebrations in our house, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
We didn't just celebrate Diwali, we celebrated Christmas. Dad insisted on that, So Christmas was bigger than Diwali in our house.
It was.
And I think that was because Mum and Dad were working so hard. Their priority was to succeed. And Christmas was the only day where the country shut down.
Yeah.
It was the only day our parents had off.
Everything was closed.
Everything was closed. They didn't have Diwali off. It was only Christmas. So they were forced into it. It was forced upon them because nothing was open. Yeah. So Christmas was extra special in our house. And as they became more and more successful, it became more of an indulgence, didn't it? Because we were able to have the nicer presents, the nicer meals, everything, and it became really special. So we were very fortunate. So I have fond memories of those Christmases. In my, if anyone was to ask me, I would say, gosh, they were the special occasions for me. They were so important. So wrapping up this podcast, I really hope, again, you're able to resonate with those stories. I hope we've given you a really good insight into what life was like for us growing up. I hope you find it interesting, and it might give you something to laugh about. But whatever reason it is, I hope you continue to listen to my podcast and join me again. I will be having some other special guests join me because, again, these stories need to be told, they need to be shared, and it needs to get you talking. So please join me again. Don't hesitate to message me, contact me directly, share your stories, share your thoughts on the podcast so far. And if there's something you want to know about us, again, please do ask. So hopefully I'll be seeing you soon on the next episode.